Maud felt the cool wood of the bookshelf press against her back as Min Suk moved closer. The emerald dress she wore, that incredible, dangerous dress, suddenly felt like it might burst into flames from the heat in his eyes. Music from the party thumped through the walls. People were laughing, drinking, having a grand old time just outside that library door. But in here? Total different universe. Min Suk's eyes never left hers as he took another step forward. He smelled amazing, like expensive cologne and something just, him. The kind of scent that made her heart race like crazy. That dress, he said, his accent getting thicker as his voice dropped low, isn't leaving this house. The way he looked at her, like he was memorizing every curve where that silk hugged her body, every inch of skin the dress revealed, made her breath catch. And neither are you. Maud should have been scared. This was her boss. The mysterious, powerful man who owned this mansion and probably half of Virginia. The man whose business made grown men nervous. But instead, she lifted her chin and looked right back at him. I don't recall asking permission. His eyes widened just a fraction. Like he wasn't used to anyone talking back. Then something else flickered there, respect, maybe. And definitely hunger. His hands started to reach for her face. Hey, if you're feeling that tension right now, you're gonna be obsessed with where this story goes next. But real quick, this channel only exists because of your support. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Takes 2 seconds and means the world to me. Now, let's rewind and see how these two got into this crazy situation. 8 months earlier. The rain was coming down so hard Maud could barely see the road ahead. Her windshield wipers were working overtime, and she was squinting like her life depended on it, which it kind of did on these dark country roads. This can't be right, she muttered, double-checking her phone's GPS. But there it was, a massive iron gate with security cameras that swiveled toward her car the second she pulled up. Like something out of a movie. Maud rolled down her window, immediately getting soaked, and pressed the intercom button. Hello? I'm Maud Ellison. The new staff person. I was told to arrive tonight. She waded through some crackling static before the gate started opening with a low mechanical hum. Well, here goes nothing, she whispered to herself as she drove through. The driveway seemed to go on forever, curving through perfectly manicured grounds. When the house finally came into view, Maud actually gasped out loud. You've got to be kidding me. This wasn't a house. This was a straight-up mansion that belonged in Architectural Digest. All sleek glass and stone, lit up against the night sky like some kind of modern castle. Security cameras followed her car as she approached, making her feel like she was being watched by 100 invisible eyes. Midnight was a weird time to start a new job. But the agency had been super clear. Show up when they tell you, or don't bother showing up at all. And Maud desperately needed this job. Like, couldn't pay next month's bills, desperate. She parked near the front entrance and just sat there for a minute, watching rain streak down her windshield. Her reflection looked tired. Stressed. Totally out of her league. Last chance to run, she told herself. But running wasn't an option anymore. Not since Andrew had cleaned out their accounts and disappeared with everything she'd worked for. Taking a deep breath, Maud grabbed her purse and made a dash through the downpour. Before she could even knock, the massive front door swung open. And there he was. Min Suk Kong himself. The agency file hadn't mentioned he was so intense. Tall, with broad shoulders that made his white button-down look like it was custom-made, it probably was. No tie, top button undone, but somehow still intimidating as hell. Maybe early 30s? With perfect hair and the kind of face that belonged on billboards. But those eyes? Cold. Calculating. Like they could see every mistake she'd ever made. Miss Ellison, he said, voice deep and accent crisp. You're late. Maud tried not to fidget. The storm slowed traffic. He held up one hand, and she immediately shut up. The gesture wasn't aggressive, just commanding. Your excuses don't interest me. He stepped back, waving her into a foyer that was bigger than her entire former apartment. Marble everywhere. Ceilings that went on forever. A chandelier that probably cost more than her car. Maud stepped inside, painfully aware she was dripping rainwater on what looked like million-dollar floors. Leave your bags, Min Suk told her. Someone will bring them to your room. Follow me. She hesitated for a second before setting down her purse and overnight bag. The rest of her stuff, what little she had left, would have to wait in the car. Min Suk walked ahead of her, moving like he owned the place, which, he did. But it was more than that. He moved like he owned the air, the space, everything around him. His feet didn't make a sound on the marble. Meanwhile, Maud's wet shoes squeaked with every step, making her cringe. Your references were excellent, he said without looking back. Though I was surprised when the agency sent your file. Surprised? You're not exactly typical household staff material. Maud tensed. Of course he'd checked her out thoroughly. Men like him didn't let strangers into their homes without doing homework. I needed a change, she said carefully. Min Suk stopped suddenly and turned, making Maud almost crash into him. They ended up standing closer than she expected, close enough that she had to tilt her head to look up at him. A change, he repeated, with a hint of something like dark amusement. From marketing executive with an engagement announcement in the Chicago Tribune to house staff in Virginia. Maud felt her cheeks get hot. Personal circumstances changed. Clearly. His eyes moved over her face like he was reading her. Your circumstances involved a man named Andrew Pearson, who seems to have disappeared with quite a lot of money. Maud's stomach dropped. You looked into my personal life? I look into everyone who enters my home. No apology. No embarrassment. Just facts. I don't like surprises, Miss Ellison. That makes two of us. The words just slipped out before she could stop them. For a second, Maud thought she'd just blown her one chance at financial survival. But something unexpected happened. The corner of Min Suk's mouth twitched, just barely. Not quite a smile, but almost. Your work starts at 6 tomorrow morning, he said, continuing down a hallway lined with artwork that belonged in museums. Mrs. Park will explain the house rules. And there are many rules here. Breaking them isn't an option. They reached a door at the end of the hall. Min Suk opened it to reveal stairs going down. Staff quarters, he explained. Your room is third on the left. You'll need to scan your fingerprint. He nodded toward a small scanner next to the door. Right index finger. Maud pressed her finger to the cool surface, feeling weirdly official as it scanned. Your room is private, Min Suk continued. No one enters without permission. But I have access to every room in my house. Of course, Maud nodded, trying not to think too hard about that. Min Suk studied her face for a long moment. Then he asked something she wasn't expecting. Why did you take this job, Miss Ellison? With your background, you could have found work elsewhere. The question caught her off guard. Maud thought about making something up, but decided against it. He'd probably know if she was lying. Because I needed to disappear, she answered honestly. And your place is about as far from my old life as I could get. Min Suk's face didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Like maybe he understood more than he let on. Well, Miss Ellison, he said finally, stepping back. We'll see if you survive here. The way he said it, not exactly threatening, but not exactly reassuring either, sent a chill down Maud's spine. As she headed down the stairs toward her new room, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made a deal with someone way more dangerous than she'd bargained for. What she didn't know yet was just how much that deal would change everything. Maud's alarm went off at 5 a.m. sharp. For a split second, she didn't know where she was. The bed felt too comfortable. The room too quiet. Then reality crashed back. She was in the staff quarters of the Kong estate, about to start her first day as household help. How the mighty have fallen, she thought, but pushed the self-pity aside. No time for that. Her quarters were nicer than expected, more like a boutique hotel room than staff housing. Queen bed with crisp white sheets. Private bathroom with fancy toiletries. A small sitting area with a love seat and TV. The walls were a soft gray, and a single window looked out onto a garden that probably looked amazing in daylight. By 5:45, Maud was dressed in the uniform that had been waiting in her closet, black pants and a simple white button-down. Professional, crisp, and completely anonymous. Just as she finished securing her hair in a neat bun, there was a soft knock at her door. An older Korean woman stood in the hallway. She had salt and pepper hair pulled back severely, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and perfect posture. Miss Ellison. I am Mrs. Park, the head housekeeper. Follow me for orientation. No good morning. No smile. Just business. Maud followed Mrs. Park through a maze of corridors and up a service staircase that led to the main kitchen, a gleaming temple of stainless steel and marble that would make professional chefs weep with envy. Breakfast for Mr. Kong is served at 7 a.m. precisely. Not 6:59. Not 7:01. Mrs. Park opened a folder and placed a printed sheet on the counter. These are his preferences. Memorize them. Maud scanned the list. No dairy. No processed sugar. Protein heavy. Specific brands of coffee and tea. The rest of your day will follow this schedule. Another paper appeared. Deviations require approval. Questions? Maud's head was spinning, but she managed to ask, what exactly are my responsibilities? Mrs. Park's expression remained neutral. You are assigned to personal quarters management, meal assistance, and wardrobe maintenance. You will also act as service staff during events. Additionally, Mr. Kong may assign specific tasks as needed. In other words, whatever he wants, whenever he wants it. Great. What followed was the most intense crash course in household management Maud had ever experienced. The proper way to make beds, hospital corners, specific fold patterns for decorative pillows. The exact temperature for ironing different fabrics. The correct products for cleaning various surfaces. The precise method for serving different beverages. By noon, Maud's brain was mush, but the real education was just beginning. The rules, Mrs. Park said, her voice dropping slightly. Most important. Listen carefully. The rules of the Kong household went beyond typical rich person expectations. They were borderline paranoid. Never enter Mr. Kang's study without explicit permission. Never answer his personal phone. Never discuss anything you see or hear within these walls with outsiders. Never enter the east wing without clearance. Never approach the property perimeter alone. Never open the door to unscheduled visitors, regardless of who they claim to be. This sounds more like a military base than a home, Maud commented. Mrs. Park's eyes narrowed slightly. Mr. Kong values his privacy and security. Those who cannot respect this should seek employment elsewhere. Message received. One more rule, Mrs. Park added, her voice softening almost imperceptibly. If you hear disagreements in Mr. Kang's study or the East Wing, you turn around and walk away. Immediately. Understood? The way she said it sent a chill down Maud's spine. Understood. By the end of her first week, Maud had established a rhythm. Up at 5 a.m. Breakfast prep by 6:30. Quarters management until noon. Lunch service. Wardrobe and personal items until dinner. Evening service as needed. She rarely saw Min Suk, which was both a relief and oddly disappointing. When their paths did cross, he was unfailingly polite but distant, treating her like expensive furniture that happened to move. But Maud noticed things. The security team that patrolled the grounds 24/7, armed with more than just flashlights. The black SUVs with tinted windows that arrived late at night. The hushed phone calls in Korean that stopped abruptly when staff entered rooms. The way certain areas of the house seemed to exist in a different reality altogether, particularly the mysterious east wing that was always locked. The other staff noticed her watching and started dropping hints. Ji-ho, the groundskeeper, casually mentioned while teaching her about the garden, Mr. Kang's family has powerful connections back in Seoul. Very traditional values. Very protective of their interests. The way he emphasized protective made it sound like a euphemism for something else entirely. Maria, one of the kitchen staff, was more blunt. Don't ask questions, honey. The pay is good, the benefits are amazing, and the less you know, the better you sleep. Even Ethan, the friendly young security guard who sometimes chatted with Maud during her morning coffee run, offered his own cryptic warning. Just remember, if Mr. Kang ever tells you to go to your room and stay there, you do it. No questions. No hesitation. You run. Despite all this, Maud found herself settling in. The work wasn't challenging compared to her old marketing career, but it was straightforward. Physical. Measurable. There was something calming about creating order in spaces, about checking tasks off lists, about knowing exactly what success looked like each day. The pay was deposited weekly into her new bank account. Already she'd saved enough to start making plans. 6 months here, she decided. 6 months of saving almost every penny, and she could start over somewhere new. Somewhere without memories. Somewhere Andrew could never find her, not that he was looking. In the meantime, she'd be the perfect employee. Invisible. Efficient. Unremarkable. Until the incident with the guard. It happened during her 3rd week. Maud was carrying a stack of freshly pressed shirts to Min Suk's dressing room when she rounded a corner and nearly collided with a heated conversation. One of the security team, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Donovan, was speaking forcefully to another staff member. His voice was raised, his stance aggressive. Maud froze, her body reacting before her mind could process why. The sudden tensing. The quick intake of breath. The unconscious step backward. It wasn't rational. Donovan wasn't even talking to her. But something about his posture, his tone, it triggered a reaction she couldn't control. A flash of Andrew, looming over her. Shouting about money. About her ruining everything. The memory hit so hard Maud didn't immediately notice Min Suk standing in a nearby doorway, watching the whole thing with those penetrating eyes. She quickly composed herself and continued on her path, acting like nothing had happened. The entire incident lasted maybe 5 seconds. The next day, Donovan was gone. Reassigned to the perimeter security team. Nowhere near the main house. No one said anything about it. No announcement was made. But when Maud crossed paths with Min Suk later that week, something had shifted in the way he looked at her. Like she'd gone from furniture to something worth noticing. The night everything changed started normally enough. Maud was finishing her evening duties, just checking that the kitchen was properly prepared for breakfast the next morning. The house was quiet. Min Suk had guests in the East Wing, which meant all regular staff were dismissed early. She was heading back to her quarters when she realized she'd forgotten to return a clothing steamer to the supply closet near Min Suk's study. Technically, she could leave it until morning, but that wasn't how she operated. Details mattered. The main floor was eerily silent as she made her way to the West Wing. No security visible. They must have been concentrated around the mysterious East Wing meeting. Good. She could drop off the steamer and disappear without having to make awkward small talk. As she approached the supply closet, she noticed the door to Min Suk's study was ajar, light spilling into the darkened hallway. Voices drifted out. Tense voices. The shipment arrives Thursday. The issue is the timing. Min Suk's voice, cool as always. The Choi family is getting suspicious. Another voice, unfamiliar. They've been watching the docks. Let them watch. They won't find anything. Maud knew she should walk away. This was exactly the kind of disagreement Mrs. Park had warned her about. But something made her pause, curiosity, maybe. Or just bad timing. She was about to continue past when the study door suddenly swung wider. Startled, Maud took a step back, accidentally bumping the decorative table behind her. A small vase wobbled, then crashed to the floor. The voices inside instantly went silent. Panic flooded Maud's system. She quickly knelt to pick up the broken pieces, hoping somehow to clean up and escape before being discovered. Too late. The study door opened fully, and there stood Min Suk. But not the polished businessman she was used to seeing. This Min Suk had his sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle. And there, tucked into his waistband, just visible beneath his partially untucked shirt, the unmistakable handle of a gun. His eyes locked with hers, widening slightly in recognition. Behind him, Maud caught a glimpse of the study, of maps spread across his desk, of 3 stern-faced men standing around it, of something that looked suspiciously like blueprints. And money. Stacks and stacks of cash. For one frozen moment, they just stared at each other, employer and employee, separated by a broken vase and what looked increasingly like a very dangerous secret. Then Min Suk stepped into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind him. "Miss Ellison," he said, voice perfectly controlled despite the situation. "I believe you're in the wrong part of the house." Sleep wasn't Maud's friend anymore. Not since Chicago. Not since Andrew. And definitely not since seeing what she'd seen in Min Suk's study 3 nights ago. So at 3 a.m., when her brain wouldn't shut off, she decided to get some water from the kitchen. Maybe raid the fancy tea collection no one would miss in the middle of the night. The house was dead silent as she padded barefoot through the dark hallways, wearing sleep shorts and an oversized t-shirt, definitely not work appropriate, but who would see her at this hour? The answer, as it turned out, was Min Suk Kong. She flipped on the small light above the kitchen island and nearly screamed. There he was, leaning against the counter, one hand pressed against his side. His white shirt was soaked with blood. "Mr. Kong," she gasped. His head jerked up, eyes wide with surprise then narrowing with pain. "Miss Ellison. Go back to your room." But Maud was already moving toward him, all thoughts of professional boundaries forgotten. "You're bleeding." An astute observation, he said through gritted teeth. "Now leave." She ignored him completely, closing the distance between them. Up close, she could see sweat beading on his forehead. His normally perfect hair was disheveled, and the hand pressed to his side was trembling slightly. "What happened?" she asked, already opening cabinets to find the first aid kit she knew was stored somewhere. "Nothing that concerns you." "Well, you're bleeding all over the kitchen counter I have to clean tomorrow, so I'd say it concerns me plenty." The words came out before she could filter them. 3 weeks ago, she would never have spoken to him like that. But something about finding your boss bleeding at 3 a.m. changed the normal rules. To her surprise, Min Suk made a sound that might have been a laugh, if it hadn't ended in a wince. "Third cabinet from the right," he said finally. "The first aid kit." Maud found it, not just a regular kit but a serious medical supply box. The kind with surgical tools and things she'd only seen in hospital shows. What kind of household needed this level of medical preparedness? She pulled it down and set it on the island. "Let me see." Min Suk hesitated, studying her face like he was making some important calculation. Finally, he slowly pulled his hand away from his side. The wound wasn't as bad as all the blood suggested, a deep cut about 3 inches long just above his hip. It was still seeping blood, but not gushing. "Knife?" Maud asked, reaching for antiseptic wipes. Min Suk's eyebrows rose slightly. "You seem unsurprised. After what I saw in your study the other night, not much would surprise me." She opened several packages of gauze. "Take off your shirt." Another flash of surprise crossed his face, but he complied, wincing as he pulled the bloody fabric over his head. Maud tried to maintain a clinical perspective, but it wasn't easy. Min Suk Kong without a shirt was distracting. Lean muscle. Smooth skin. And scars. Several of them. Old ones. Stories written in healed tissue. "Focus, Maud." This will sting, she warned, then pressed an antiseptic wipe to the wound. Min Suk hissed but didn't flinch. So, Maud said conversationally, as if they were chatting over coffee instead of blood, are we going to talk about it? About what? About whatever dangerous thing you're involved in that gets you stabbed in the middle of the night? She could feel his eyes on her face as she cleaned the wound. When he didn't answer, she looked up and found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Why are you helping me? He asked quietly. Because you're bleeding. Most people would run in the opposite direction. I guess I'm not most people. She reached for butterfly bandages. Though Mrs. Park did warn me to walk away from disagreements. I'm guessing this qualifies. Min Suk was quiet for a moment, then said, it wasn't a disagreement. It was a reminder. A reminder that what? You're stabbable. That almost laugh again. A reminder that loyalty requires maintenance. Maud smoothed the bandages over the cut, then began preparing a larger dressing. And does everyone in your line of work get these reminders? My line of work? International business with a side of suspicious meetings and emergency medical kits. She felt him tense under her fingers but kept working. You shouldn't ask questions you don't want answers to, Miss Ellison. Maud, she corrected, securing the bandage with medical tape. If I'm patching you up at 3 a.m., you can use my first name. Their eyes met again, and this time something shifted in his expression. A crack in the armor. Maud, he repeated, her name sounding different in his accent. Softer somehow. She stepped back, surveying her work. You might need stitches, but this should hold for now. Min Suk touched the bandage gently. You've done this before. It wasn't a question, but Maud answered anyway. My dad was a construction worker. Always coming home with cuts and bruises. Mom taught me basic first aid when I was 10. Your parents, they're still in Chicago? No. Maud started cleaning up the bloody gauze. They died in a car accident my senior year of college. I'm sorry. And he sounded like he actually meant it. It was a long time ago. Min Suk watched her work for a moment, then said, my parents are gone too. My father when I was 16. My mother 3 years later. The personal share caught Maud off guard. She looked up from her cleanup to find his eyes still on her. What happened? She asked. My father was, in a similar line of work. The consequences caught up with him. His voice was carefully neutral. My mother never recovered from the loss. The simple statement contained so much unspoken pain that Maud felt it like a physical ache. I'm sorry, she echoed his words back to him. Min Suk nodded once, accepting the sympathy without further comment. He pushed himself away from the counter, testing his mobility with a slight grimace. You should take it easy, Maud advised. That cut is deep. Not an option. He reached for his ruined shirt, then seemed to think better of it. I need to change and make some calls. At 3:30 in the morning? Time differences, he said vaguely, but they both knew it was a lie. Maud finished packing up the first aid kit. An awkward silence settled between them, the kind that happens when people accidentally share too much and don't know how to return to normal. Finally, Min Suk broke it. Why aren't you afraid of me? He asked abruptly. Everyone else is. The question was so unexpected, so genuine, that Maud took a moment to consider her answer. I've already survived the worst thing I thought could happen to me, she said finally. My fiancé, the man I thought loved me, stole everything. Not just my money. My trust. My sense of safety. My belief that I could tell when someone was lying to me. She closed the first aid kit with a snap. After that, very little scares me anymore. And honestly, I've met men in designer suits with clean hands who terrified me more than you do with your blood-stained shirt and whatever's in your study. Min Suk stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Your fiancé, he said slowly. If you could see him again, what would you do? Nothing, Maud said honestly. I wouldn't waste a single breath on him. The best revenge is living well, right? So that's my plan. Save money, start over, build something no one can take from me again. Something like respect flickered across Min Suk's face. A practical approach, he said. Then, after a pause, thank you. For this. He gestured to the bandage. You're welcome. Though you might want to come up with a better explanation for Mrs. Park if she asks why there's blood on the kitchen floor. I'll handle Mrs. Park. Min Suk moved toward the door, then stopped. You saw something in my study that night. Something you shouldn't have. Maud's heart rate kicked up. Yes. And yet you haven't quit. Or gone to the police. Would there be a point to either? Their eyes locked in silent understanding. Then Min Suk said, get some sleep, Maud. Tomorrow will be busy. He left without further explanation, leaving Maud alone in the kitchen with blood-stained gauze and more questions than answers. The next morning, the house was in a frenzy. Security teams moved with urgent purpose. Staff spoke in hushed tones. Mrs. Park's face was even more pinched than usual as she handed out revised schedules. All regular duties continue, she announced crisply. But no one leaves the main house without escort. No exceptions. Maud went about her work, trying to ignore the tension crackling through the estate. She was organizing Min Suk's closet, noting that several shirts had disappeared, probably bloodstained, when she overheard voices in the hallway. The Choi family isn't making threats, a man was saying. Ethan, she recognized. The friendly security guard. Though he didn't sound friendly now. They're making moves. Big difference. Mr. Kong isn't concerned, another voice responded. Mr. Kong got stabbed last night, Ethan countered. He should be very concerned. It was just a warning. This time. Next time they'll aim higher. The voices faded as they continued down the hallway, but Maud remained frozen in the closet, a silk tie hanging forgotten from her fingers. The Choi family. The same name she'd overheard in Min Suk's study. Suddenly, working at the Kong estate felt a lot more complicated than she'd bargained for. And a lot more dangerous. But strangely, when Maud tried to summon fear, all she felt was concern. For Min Suk. Things changed after that night in the kitchen. Subtle shifts that Maud noticed, like someone who'd spent her career analyzing patterns. The way Min Suk would now acknowledge her with a slight nod when they passed in hallways. How coffee would appear at her workstation when she was organizing his wardrobe, prepared exactly as she liked it, though she'd never told him her preference. The way his eyes would linger on her face during conversations that used to be just brief instructions. Little things that shouldn't matter. But did. 2 weeks after the kitchen incident, Maud was placing freshly polished shoes in Min Suk's closet when he appeared in the doorway. She'd gotten used to his silent approaches by now and didn't jump anymore. Your Korean pronunciation is improving, he said without preamble. Maud looked up, surprised. You heard me? This morning. You were practicing while organizing files. She felt her cheeks warm. Just basic phrases from an app. I thought it might be useful since most of your calls are in Korean. Min Suk studied her for a moment. Your app is teaching you formal business Korean. Not very practical for daily use. Oh. Maud tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. It was the only free option. Something like amusement flickered across his face. If you want to learn, I could teach you. Properly. The offer hung in the air between them, unexpected, personal, crossing invisible lines they'd both been carefully observing. I'd like that, Maud said before she could overthink it. And that was how their evening lessons began. Twice a week, after dinner service, Maud would meet Min Suk in the library. At first, they sat at opposite ends of the long table, the distance between them filled with vocabulary lists and pronunciation exercises. Annyeonghaseyo, she practiced, the greeting feeling clumsy on her tongue. Better, Min Suk nodded. But you're still too tense here. He touched his own throat, demonstrating. Little by little, the space between them shrank. By the third lesson, they sat across from each other. By the fifth, side by side, Min Suk leaning in to correct her written characters, his shoulder occasionally brushing hers. This one means star, he explained, taking her pen to demonstrate the proper stroke order. Baiyal, Maud repeated carefully. Good. And this is beautiful, Arumdan. Arumdan, she echoed, noticing how he watched her mouth form the words. And together, they make beautiful star, Arumdan Baiyal. Is that a common phrase? Min Suk's pen paused on the page. My grandmother used it. For the women in our family. A slight smile touched his lips. She would have called you that. The comment, so unexpected and personal, made Maud's heart skip. Before she could respond, Min Suk cleared his throat and moved on to the next phrase. These lessons became the highlight of Maud's weeks. Not just for the language learning, but for the glimpses of Min Suk beyond the cold businessman. He told stories about growing up in Seoul. About his grandmother's cooking. About the first time he visited America as a teenager. In turn, Maud shared bits of herself. Her childhood in Detroit. College years in Chicago. The marketing career she built from nothing. Carefully edited stories that omitted Andrew's betrayal but revealed other parts of who she was. They were still employer and employee. The power imbalance remained. But in the library, surrounded by books and Korean characters, they were almost something else. Almost friends. You spend a lot of time with Mr. Kong lately. Mrs. Park's voice made Maud jump. She'd been daydreaming while folding laundry, specifically about the way Min Suk had laughed during their lesson last night when she'd accidentally called him a vegetable instead of respectable. Just language lessons, Maud said, smoothing a pillowcase with extra attention. Mrs. Park's expression remained neutral, but her eyes held something that looked like concern. May I speak freely, Miss Ellison? Of course. The older woman carefully closed the door to the linen room before continuing. Mr. Kong is a good employer. Fair. Generous. But his world. She paused, choosing her words with visible care. His world swallows people whole. A chill ran down Maud's spine despite the warmth of the room. What do you mean? I have worked for the Kong family since Min Suk was a boy. I have seen. Mrs. Park's gaze grew distant. Things. People who get too close disappear. Or worse, they stay and become something else entirely. Are you warning me away from the language lessons? Maud asked, trying to keep her voice casual. I am warning you to remember who you are. And who he is. Mrs. Park's hand briefly touched Maud's, a gesture so unexpected it felt almost maternal. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. Before Maud could press for more details, Mrs. Park straightened, her professional mask sliding back into place. The blue sheets go in the east guest room, she instructed, as if the previous conversation hadn't happened. And Mr. Kong needs his gray suit pressed for tomorrow's meeting. Just like that, the moment was over. But Mrs. Park's warning lingered like perfume in an empty room. The incident in town happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Maud had been sent to pick up a package from the tailor in McLean, a special errand that Min Suk had specifically requested she handle personally. The contents are valuable, he'd explained, handing her keys to one of the estate's less conspicuous vehicles. The tailor's shop was in an upscale shopping area. Maud collected the carefully wrapped package without incident. It was on her way back to the car that she noticed them, two men in dark suits, watching her with too much interest. At first, she thought she was being paranoid. Chicago had made her jumpy around strangers, especially men who looked like they belonged in high-end finance. Like Andrew. But when she took a deliberate detour through a bookstore and emerged to find them still following, she knew it wasn't paranoia. Maud quickened her pace, the package tucked securely under her arm. The parking garage was just across the street. If she could reach the car. Miss Ellison. She froze as one of the men called her name. How did they know who she was? Turning slowly, she faced them. Up close, they looked even more intimidating. The taller one had a scar running through his eyebrow. The other wore an expensive watch that glinted as he adjusted his cuffs. "I think you have me confused with someone else," Maud said, grateful her voice didn't shake. "I don't think so." Scar Eyebrow smiled without warmth. "You work for Min Suk Kong. And that package belongs to him." Maud's grip tightened on the wrapped parcel. "I need to go." "Of course." Watchman nodded politely. "We just wanted to deliver a message to Mr. Kong." "I'm not a messenger." "Oh, but you are." Scar Eyebrow stepped closer. "Tell him the Choi family sends their regards. And that packages can be so easily lost." The threat wasn't even thinly veiled. Maud took a step back, bumping into a concrete pillar. Her mind raced through options. Scream? Run? Hand over the package? None of them felt right. Instead, she straightened her spine and channeled every ounce of executive authority she'd cultivated in her previous life. "Gentlemen," she said coolly, "I don't know what game you're playing, but I guarantee it's not worth it. That security camera," she nodded toward the corner of the garage where a black dome was clearly visible, "has been recording this entire interaction. And the panic button on my keys," she held up the car's electronic fob, finger hovering over a red button, "is connected directly to Mr. Kang's security team. So unless you want company in the next 60 seconds, I suggest you deliver your own messages." It was a bluff. A complete fabrication. The fob was just a regular car key, and she had no idea if the camera even worked. But something in her delivery must have been convincing, because the men exchanged glances. "Smart girl," Watchman said finally. "Too smart to be running errands for Kong." "Have a nice day," Maud replied with forced pleasantness, sidling toward her car. They let her go, but she could feel their eyes on her back as she walked away. Her hands shook so badly she dropped the keys twice before managing to unlock the car door. Once inside, doors locked, she let out a shuddering breath. What the hell had just happened? And who were the Choi family that seemed determined to cause trouble for Min Suk? By the time Maud returned to the estate, she'd composed herself. No need to make a big deal of the incident. She'd deliver the package, mention the message, and move on with her day. But Min Suk took one look at her face when she entered his study and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked sharply, rising from behind his desk. "Nothing serious. Just some men who wanted to give you a message." Maud tried to sound casual as she placed the package on his desk. "They said the Choi family sends their regards. Something about packages being easily lost." Min Suk went very still. Then, in one fluid motion, he crossed the room and closed the study door. "Describe them," he demanded, his voice low and controlled in a way that somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. Maud did, watching as his expression darkened with each detail. "Did they touch you?" he asked when she finished. "No. They just talked." "What else did they say?" "Word for word." She repeated the brief conversation as accurately as she could, including her bluff about the cameras and panic button. Min Suk listened intently, his jaw tightening when she described how they'd known her name. When she finished, the silence in the study was thick enough to cut. "I handled it," Maud said, trying to break the tension. "It wasn't a big deal. They could have hurt you." Min Suk's voice was barely controlled, each word clipped. "They could have taken you. But they didn't. Because you were smart." His eyes locked with hers. "And lucky." Min Suk turned away, pulling out his phone and barking rapid-fire Korean into it. From his tone, someone was about to have a very bad day. When he ended the call, he stood with his back to her for a long moment, hands braced on his desk, shoulders rigid with tension. "You won't be running errands off the property again," he said finally. "Not alone." It wasn't a request. It was an order. "That seems excessive," Maud protested. "I can handle." "This isn't about what you can handle." Min Suk turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes caught her off guard. This is about what I can handle. And finding you hurt or missing is not on that list. The admission, so personal, so unexpected, hung in the air between them. Oh, was all Maud could manage. Min Suk seemed to realize what he'd revealed and quickly regained his composure. Your valuable staff, he added, more professionally. Replacing you would be inconvenient. But they both knew that wasn't what he'd meant at all. 3 days later, the announcement came during breakfast. The annual Kong Foundation Gala will be held here at the estate in 2 weeks, Mrs. Park informed the assembled staff. As always, this is our most important event of the year. Preparations begin immediately. The gala, Maud learned, was a major social and charitable event. Political figures. Business leaders. International guests. A showcase of the Kong family's influence and philanthropy. All household staff will attend in service capacity, Mrs. Park continued, handing out detailed assignment sheets. Formal uniforms will be provided. Maud accepted her sheet without complaint, though privately she was dreading spending an evening carrying trays and being invisible among McLean's elite. It felt too much like a step backward, a reminder of how far she'd fallen from her executive days. She was organizing the event linen closet later that afternoon when Min Suk found her. Miss Ellison, he said formally, mindful of Mrs. Park working nearby. A moment, please. Maud followed him into the hallway, curious about his unusually stiff demeanor. The foundation gala, he began once they were alone. You've received your service assignment? Yes. Champagne trays and coat check. Min Suk nodded, then seemed to hesitate, something she'd rarely seen him do. I'd like you to attend as a guest instead, he said finally. Maud blinked, certain she'd misheard. A guest? Yes. Not in service capacity. Why? The question was direct, perhaps too direct for employee-to-employer conversation. But their relationship had evolved beyond those simple boundaries. Min Suk studied her face for a moment before answering. Because I would prefer to have you at my table rather than carrying trays between them. The implication made Maud's pulse quicken. Before she could respond, he continued. It's also a security consideration. After the incident in town, keeping you visible beside me is safer than having you circulate through the crowd. Ah. Security. That made more sense than the alternative her heart had briefly hoped for. I don't have anything to wear to that kind of event, she said practically. That will be handled. Min Suk's expression gave nothing away. Do you accept? Maud thought of Mrs. Park's warning. Of doors that couldn't be closed once opened. Of worlds that swallowed people whole. She should say no. Should maintain professional distance. Should remember who she was and who he was. Instead, she heard herself say, yes. I accept. Something like satisfaction flickered across Min Suk's face. Good. A dress will be delivered to your quarters next week for fitting. As he walked away, Maud couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just agreed to much more than attending a party. Miss Ellison, your opinion please. Maud looked up from her clipboard, surprised to be addressed directly during the gala planning meeting. Until now, she'd been taking notes in the corner while Mrs. Park and the event coordinator discussed arrangements. Just because Min Suk had invited her as a guest didn't mean she was excused from helping prepare. The event coordinator, a razor-thin woman named Vivian with a permanent Bluetooth headset, was holding up 2 different table arrangement photos. Me? Maud asked, certain she'd misheard. Mr. Kong specifically requested your input on the final decor selections, Vivian said, looking slightly annoyed at having to explain. Something about your background in visual presentation. Heat crept up Maud's neck as every staff member in the room turned to look at her. Min Suk had clearly been researching her marketing career more thoroughly than she'd realized. The arrangement on the left is more inviting, she said, falling back on her professional instincts. The candle heights create better face-to-face sightlines for conversation. Vivian examined the photo again, then nodded crisply. Agreed. Left arrangement it is. For the next hour, Maud found herself pulled increasingly into the planning process. Her opinion on everything from lighting to menu presentation was suddenly valued. Mrs. Park watched with an unreadable expression as Maud's role shifted before everyone's eyes from observer to participant. When the meeting ended, Vivian handed Maud a separate folder. "These are the seating arrangements for the main table. Mr. Kong has placed you here." She pointed to a spot directly beside his own seat. Maud stared at the diagram, a flutter of something between excitement and panic rising in her chest. Not just attending as a guest, but seated beside Min Suk at the head table, surrounded by what were undoubtedly the most important people in the room. There must be some mistake, she managed. "Mr. Kong doesn't make mistakes with his seating charts," Vivian replied, already moving on to her next task. "The dress fitting is scheduled for tomorrow at 2. Don't be late." As the room cleared, Maud remained frozen, staring at the folder in her hands. "Quite the promotion," Mrs. Park said quietly, appearing at her side. "From laundry to the right hand of Min Suk Kong in less than 3 months." There was no accusation in her tone, just a weary knowing that made Maud's skin prickle. "It's just a seating arrangement," Maud said, trying to sound casual. Mrs. Park's eyes, wise from decades of service in this household, held Maud's for a long moment. "Nothing in this house is just anything, Miss Ellison." The dress arrived 5 days before the gala. Maud returned from her afternoon duties to find an enormous white box on her bed, tied with a simple black ribbon. No note. No card. Nothing to indicate who had sent it, though she knew perfectly well. For several minutes, she just stared at it, afraid of what opening that box might mean. Afraid of crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Finally, heart pounding, she tugged the ribbon loose and lifted the lid. Emerald green silk caught the light like liquid jewels. Maud gasped softly as she lifted the gown from its nest of tissue paper. The fabric felt cool and impossibly smooth against her fingers, whispering with luxury and promises. She held it against herself, looking in the mirror. The cut was perfect, form-fitting but elegant. A neckline that dipped just enough to be alluring without crossing into inappropriate. A slit up one side that would show a glimpse of leg with each step. The color, that rich emerald, would make her dark skin glow. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever touched. And the most dangerous. Because a dress like this wasn't just clothing. It was a message. From Min Suk to her. From her to everyone who would see her in it. Especially after everything that had been building between them over these months. The language lessons. The shared glances. The way he'd reacted when those men approached her in town. Maud carefully laid the dress on her bed and sank down beside it, memories washing over her like a cold tide. 1 year ago, Chicago. "I've transferred everything to our joint account," Maud said, showing Andrew the confirmation on her phone. "The house down payment is ready whenever we find the right place." Andrew smiled, kissing her forehead. "You're amazing, babe. 10 years of savings, right there. Plus the bonus from the Carter campaign," she reminded him, still glowing from the successful marketing launch that had earned her team industry recognition. "We're actually doing this. Buying a house. Getting married. All because you trusted me with the financials." Andrew's arms wrapped around her waist. "Smart women are so sexy." She'd laughed, completely missing the calculating look in his eyes. 3 days later, she'd stood in that same spot in their apartment, staring at an empty bank account on her phone screen. Calling Andrew's number that no longer worked. Finding his clothes gone from their closet. The email came the next day, from an account she didn't recognize. "Sorry it ended this way. You're smart and beautiful, but not smart enough. Don't try to find me. You won't." Just like that, everything was gone. Her savings. Her emergency fund. Even the cash she kept hidden in her winter boots. He'd taken it all, along with her trust and her ability to believe in people's basic decency. The police had been sympathetic but not hopeful. "These guys are professionals," the detective had explained gently. They target successful women, establish relationships, gain financial control, then disappear. He's probably done this before. Probably not even his real name. And he'd been right. Andrew Pearson, if that was even his name, had vanished like smoke, leaving Maud with nothing but debt and humiliation. The memory made her stomach clench even now. She looked at the emerald dress again, suddenly seeing it differently. Another beautiful trap. Another powerful man with ulterior motives. Another opportunity to lose herself. Min Suk wasn't Andrew. She knew that. But he was still a man with secrets. With power. With a world she only glimpsed through cracks in carefully constructed walls. Could she really risk trusting again? Letting herself feel the things she'd been working so hard to suppress? The safe choice would be to return the dress. Request her original service assignment. Maintain professional boundaries. Remember why she was here, to save money, rebuild, protect herself from ever being vulnerable again. Maud ran her fingers over the silk one more time, then carefully returned it to the box. I know you're on the edge of your seat wondering what choice she'll make. But hey, if you're enjoying this story, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an upload. It takes just 1 second to hit that button, and it helps more than you know. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and let's get back to that dress decision. The night of the gala arrived with perfect weather and military precision organization. From her window, Maud could see the stream of luxury vehicles arriving at the main entrance. Women in designer gowns. Men in bespoke tuxedos. The elite of politics and business converging on the Kong estate. She'd avoided Min Suk for the past 5 days, volunteering for duties that kept her in parts of the house he rarely visited. She'd skipped their scheduled language lesson with a vague excuse about helping with gala preparations. Running away. Again. Just like she'd been doing since Chicago. The emerald dress still sat in its box on her bed, untouched since the day it arrived. Beside it now was a smaller package that had been delivered that morning, containing delicate gold jewelry and shoes that matched the dress perfectly. Maud stood in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel, staring at the box. Time was running out. The gala had started 30 minutes ago. She needed to decide. Wear the dress and all it represented? Or hide in her room, proving to herself and everyone else that she was exactly what Andrew had made her, too afraid to trust, too broken to take chances. A memory surfaced, her grandmother's voice, clear as day. Baby girl, sometimes the only way past fear is through it. Before she could overthink it, Maud opened the box and took out the dress. 20 minutes later, she stood before her mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The emerald silk hugged every curve like it had been created specifically for her body, which, she realized, it probably had been. The gold jewelry caught the light when she moved. Her hair, usually pulled back in a practical bun, fell in loose waves around her shoulders. But it was her eyes that seemed most transformed. For the first time in over a year, they held no shadows. No fear. Just a clear, steady determination that had once been the hallmark of Maud Ellison, marketing executive and force of nature. There you are, she whispered to her reflection. I've missed you. With a deep breath, Maud left her room and headed for the staff staircase at the back of the house. It would let her enter the gala through a side door, avoiding the main entrance with its photographers and announcement of guests. Better to slip in quietly. Find Min Suk. Figure out what all this meant. The sounds of the party drifted up the stairwell as she descended, string quartet music, the hum of conversation, occasional laughter. Each step brought her closer to a choice she couldn't unchoose. A door she couldn't unopen. 3 steps from the bottom, Maud heard a sharp intake of breath. She looked down to find Min Suk standing there, as if he'd been waiting. As if he'd known exactly when she would appear. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that made him look even more imposing than usual. His dark hair was styled back from his face, emphasizing the sharp angles of his cheekbones. He looked powerful. Dangerous. Breathtaking. But it was his expression that caught and held her, the naked hunger in his eyes as they traveled slowly from her face down the length of her body in that emerald silk, then back up again. Something primal and possessive darkened his gaze as it locked with hers. For a suspended moment, neither of them moved or spoke. The party continued in the distance, but here in this stairwell, time seemed to stop completely. Then Min Suk's expression shifted, hardening into something that looked almost like anger. His jaw clenched. His hands formed fists at his sides. "That dress," he said, each word precise and controlled, "isn't leaving this house." Maud's breath caught in her throat as he took one step up toward her. "And neither are you." Before Maud could even respond, Min Suk's hand closed around her wrist. Not roughly, but firmly enough that she couldn't easily pull away. His touch sent electricity up her arm as he guided her away from the stairwell, away from the sounds of the gala, down a dimly lit corridor. "What are you doing?" she asked, her heels clicking rapidly against marble as she struggled to keep pace with his long strides. He didn't answer. Just kept moving with single-minded purpose, his grip on her wrist unyielding. They reached the library, their language lesson sanctuary, and Min Suk pulled her inside, closing the door behind them with a decisive click. Only then did he release her, taking a step back as if he needed physical distance between them. The room was dark except for a single lamp and moonlight streaming through tall windows. It cast everything in silver and shadow, including Min Suk's face as he stared at her with that same intense expression. "What is this about?" Maud demanded, rubbing her wrist even though he hadn't hurt her. "That should be obvious." His voice was low, rough at the edges. "Nothing about you is ever obvious." A humorless smile touched his lips. "Says the woman who disappeared for 5 days after receiving my gift." So he had noticed her avoiding him. Of course he had. "I needed to think," Maud said honestly. About? About what wearing this dress would mean. She smoothed the emerald silk over her hips, not missing how his eyes followed the movement. About crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. Min Suk took a step closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "And what conclusion did you reach, given that you're standing here in it?" Maud lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. "That I'm tired of being afraid." Something flashed in his eyes, approval, maybe. Or understanding. "Afraid of me?" he asked. "No." She shook her head. "Afraid of myself. Of wanting things I shouldn't want." The admission hung in the air between them, more revealing than she'd intended. Min Suk studied her face, his expression softening slightly. "And what do you want, Maud?" The way he said her name, soft, almost reverent, made her heart race. "I think you know. I need to hear you say it." They were playing a dangerous game now, dancing around truths that could change everything. "Why me?" she asked instead of answering. "I'm your employee. I clean your house. I organize your clothes. There are a dozen more appropriate women at that gala right now. None of them are you." Min Suk moved closer still, not touching her but near enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "None of them looked at me bleeding in a kitchen at 3 in the morning and decided to help instead of run. None of them stood up to Choi's men with nothing but quick thinking and courage." His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not quite making contact. "None of them see me. You do." The simple statement held such vulnerability that Maud felt her resolve weakening. She'd promised herself to be careful, to guard her heart. But standing here in this moonlit library, with Min Suk looking at her like she was something precious and rare, those promises seemed distant and hollow. "This can't work," she whispered. "Your world and mine, they're too different. They're the same world now." His fingers finally made contact, brushing a strand of hair from her face with exquisite gentleness. "You've been living in mine for months. As staff. Not as..." She trailed off, unable to put a label on what this was becoming. "Is that all you want to be?" Min Suk's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "Tell me to stop, Maud. Tell me you don't feel this, and I'll walk away. We'll return to the gala." You'll be seated elsewhere. Tomorrow, we'll be employer and employee again. Nothing more. It would be the sensible choice. The safe choice. But Maud was tired of making choices based on fear. I don't want you to stop, she admitted, her voice barely audible even in the quiet room. Something like triumph flashed in Min Suk's eyes. His hand slid to the back of her neck, drawing her closer until their foreheads touched. Say it, he urged softly. What do you want? Maud's heart hammered against her ribs as months of suppressed feelings rose to the surface. You, she whispered. I want you. The confession broke something loose between them. Min Suk's control, always so carefully maintained, shattered visibly. In one fluid motion, he closed the final distance between them, his mouth finding hers with a hunger that took her breath away. The kiss was nothing like Maud had imagined, and she had imagined it, during language lessons, watching his lips form Korean words. During quiet moments organizing his closet, breathing in the scent that lingered on his clothes. Reality was better. Hotter. More consuming. Min Suk kissed like a man starved, one hand tangled in her hair, the other at the small of her back, pressing her against him. There was nothing hesitant about it, nothing tentative. Just pure, unfiltered need that matched the ache building inside her. Maud's arms wound around his neck, her body arching into his as months of tension ignited between them. The emerald silk of her dress rustled as his hands slid up her spine, holding her closer still. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min Suk rested his forehead against hers again. Do you have any idea, he murmured, how long I've wanted to do that? How hard it's been watching you move through my house, always just beyond reach. Why didn't you? Maud asked, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Because I needed to be sure. His eyes searched hers. Sure that you were ready. Sure that what I saw in your eyes wasn't just my own wanting reflected back at me. And now? His smile was slow and devastatingly intimate. Now I'm sure. He leaned in to kiss her again, softer this time but no less intense, his hands framing her face like she was something fragile and precious. Maud melted into him, all her doubts and fears temporarily silenced by the rightness of being in his arms. This close, she could feel his heartbeat matching the frantic pace of her own. The library door banged open without warning. They sprang apart, Maud smoothing her dress in automatic embarrassment while Min Suk turned toward the intrusion with barely concealed irritation. Ethan, the head of security, stood in the doorway, his normally friendly face grim. He took in the scene before him with a quick glance but maintained professional composure. Sir, we have a situation. His eyes flicked briefly to Maud, then back to Min Suk. Perimeter sensors have been triggered at the north gate. 2 vehicles approaching without clearance. The change in Min Suk was immediate and complete. Like watching a mask slide into place, erasing all traces of the passionate, vulnerable man from seconds earlier. His posture straightened. His eyes hardened. The softness in his expression vanished, replaced by cold calculation. Identification, he asked, his voice clipped and businesslike. Plates matched Choi family associates. 4 men minimum. Min Suk nodded once, already moving toward the door. Lockdown protocol. Move our guests to the center rooms. Tell them it's a demonstration of the new security system, make it sound exciting. No one leaves until we've assessed the threat. Ethan nodded, already speaking rapidly into his earpiece as he stepped back into the hallway. Min Suk turned back to Maud, and for a brief moment, she caught a glimpse of the man who had just kissed her, concern flashing in his eyes as they swept over her face. Stay in this room, he instructed, all tenderness gone from his voice. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or Ethan. What's happening? Maud asked, her mind struggling to shift gears from the intimacy of moments before to whatever danger now approached. The Choi family is making another move. Min Suk's jaw tightened. Testing me. Testing my security. Especially tonight, with so many valuable guests present. Should I be worried? No. His answer came too quickly to be entirely truthful. This is just business. What kind of business involves perimeter sensors and lockdown protocols? Min Suk hesitated, clearly torn between rushing to handle the security threat and addressing her question. My kind, he said finally. I'll explain everything when this is resolved. I promise. He moved toward the door, then paused, returning to her in 3 quick strides. His hand cupped her face again, his eyes intensely focused on hers. What happened between us, what was happening, it's real. Remember that. Then he was gone, the library door closing firmly behind him. Maud stood frozen for a moment, her lips still tingling from his kiss, her mind racing to process everything. Finally, she moved to the door and locked it as instructed, then pressed her ear against the wood. Voices in the hallway. Min Suk and someone else, not Ethan, a different security team member. Position teams at all access points, Min Suk was saying, his voice colder than Maud had ever heard it. If they breach the perimeter, you have my authorization for maximum response. The primary team is already in position, sir, the other voice replied. What about our special guests? Move them to the secure room below. If this goes badly, we can't risk exposure. And the shipment documents? In the safe. The codes have already been transmitted to Seoul. Even if they somehow got past security and into my office, they'd find nothing useful. Sir, should we prepare the contingency? A pause. Then Min Suk's voice, deadly in its precision, have it ready. But understand this. If anyone from the Choi family sets foot inside this house during my event, I want them alive. I'll deal with them personally. The way he said it sent chills down Maud's spine. There was no emotion in his voice. No anger. No fear. Just cold, calculated intent that promised something Maud didn't want to imagine. Understood, sir, the other man responded, a note of something like respect, or fear, in his tone. The voices moved away, leaving Maud alone with the sudden, crystal-clear understanding of exactly who Min Suk Kang really was. Not just a businessman with security concerns. Not just a wealthy Korean with family connections. Something far more dangerous. Something that operated in shadows and spoke of maximum response and personal retribution like they were ordinary business matters. All those whispered warnings. All those strange occurrences she'd noticed around the estate. All those moments when she'd glimpsed something dark beneath Min Suk's carefully controlled exterior. They weren't anomalies. They were glimpses of the truth. Maud touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss, and wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Or if, perhaps, she'd finally found something worth the risk. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours as Maud paced the library, straining to hear anything beyond the thick wooden door. The distant sounds of the gala had changed, music still played, but there was an underlying current of tension, like the forced cheerfulness of an awkward party. The lock clicked, and Maud froze mid-step. She grabbed a heavy crystal paperweight from the desk, ready to defend herself if necessary. The door opened to reveal Min Suk, his expression grim. His eyes flickered to the makeshift weapon in her hand, and something like approval crossed his face. Smart. But unnecessary right now. He held out his hand. Come with me. Maud set down the paperweight but hesitated before taking his hand. What's happening out there? We've contained the situation temporarily. His jaw was tight. But I need to move you to a more secure location. The other guests are being managed. You're my priority. There was no time to analyze that statement as Min Suk took her hand, leading her swiftly through corridors she'd never seen before. They passed security personnel speaking urgently into headsets. The elegant gala happening in the main rooms might as well have been in another universe. They descended a staircase hidden behind what Maud had always thought was a solid wall, then moved through a narrow passage that opened into a modern security center. Screens displayed every angle of the estate. Men and women in tactical gear monitored equipment that looked military-grade. No one seemed surprised to see Min Suk bringing her through this restricted area. Their eyes registered her presence, then returned to their tasks without comment. At the far end of the security center, Min Suk pressed his palm to a scanner beside an unmarked door. It opened with a soft hiss. "After you," he said, his hand at the small of her back guiding her forward. The room beyond was unexpected. Not the concrete bunker Maud had imagined, but something more like a luxury studio apartment. Tasteful furniture. Stocked kitchenette. A door that presumably led to a bathroom. No windows, but lighting that mimicked natural daylight. "What is this place?" Maud asked as the door closed automatically behind them. "Safe room." Min Suk moved to a panel on the wall, checking something on the display. Fully self-contained. Air filtration. Independent power. Communications array. Supplies for weeks if necessary. "You built a secret apartment under your house?" Maud couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "I built several." Min Suk turned to face her, his expression deadly serious. "Security isn't an afterthought in my world. It's a necessity." Maud crossed her arms over the emerald silk of her dress, the dress that now seemed to belong to another life entirely. "Your world," she repeated. "I think it's time you told me exactly what that world is, Min Suk." He held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. "Decision made." "Yes. You deserve the truth." He gestured toward the seating area. "This might take a while." Maud sat on the edge of a sleek couch, watching as Min Suk loosened his tie and removed his tuxedo jacket. Even in crisis, his movements were precise, controlled. He draped the jacket over a chair, then rolled up his sleeves, revealing a scar on his forearm Maud had never seen before. Instead of joining her on the couch, he paced the room, gathering his thoughts. "My family has been in business for 3 generations, he began. "It started with my grandfather after the Korean War, when resources were scarce and official channels were corrupt. He built networks. Made connections. Moved goods where they needed to go. Smuggling," Maud translated. Min Suk's mouth quirked in a humorless smile. "Initially, yes. But over time, it evolved. Legitimate enterprises layered over the original foundation. Shipping. Import-export. Real estate. Banking. The Kong Foundation is genuine." His expression softened slightly. "My mother's initiative. Educational opportunities for disadvantaged youth. Medical research funding. Disaster relief. The money may come from complicated sources, but it does real good." Maud processed this, watching Min Suk's face carefully. "And your role?" "I manage our American interests." His hands slid into his pockets, his posture deceptively casual. "Both legitimate and otherwise. The shipments. The meetings. The men with guns." Maud connected the dots aloud. "You're not just a businessman with security concerns. You're a criminal?" Min Suk supplied the word she'd hesitated to say. "By strictly legal definitions, yes." The confirmation should have shocked her. Should have sent her running for the door. Instead, Maud felt an odd sense of clarity, like puzzle pieces finally snapping into place. "The Choi family," she said. "They're your competition? They're a problem." Min Suk's expression hardened. "For generations, territorial boundaries were respected. My family controlled certain ports, certain routes. They controlled others. But the current Choi patriarch is greedy. Aggressive. He wants everything. The men who approached me in town. A warning. A test of our security." Min Suk's hands clenched in his pockets. "And tonight is their latest move. So this is what, a turf war? It's business." Min Suk's voice was matter-of-fact. "Uncomfortable, dangerous business, but still business. They probe for weaknesses. We respond with strength. Eventually, we'll negotiate new boundaries. Unless someone gets killed first. Min Suk's silence was answer enough. Maud stood suddenly, needing to move. The emerald dress rustled as she paced the room, mind racing to integrate this new reality with everything she thought she knew about Min Suk Kang. All these months, she said finally, turning to face him. All these months I've been working in your home, eating at your table, teaching you English idioms and learning Korean phrases. And you never once thought I deserved to know that I was living in the headquarters of what? A criminal enterprise? A mafia operation? Min Suk didn't flinch from her anger. Would you have stayed if you'd known from the beginning? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. He moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I needed you to know me before you knew what I do. To see me as a person, not a stereotype. So you lied. I omitted. Min Suk's voice softened. And yes, I should have told you sooner. Especially after what happened in the kitchen that night. After you helped me. But I was. He trailed off, something vulnerable flickering across his face. You were what? Maud pressed. Afraid, he admitted quietly. Afraid that once you knew everything, you would look at me differently. That whatever was growing between us would die. The raw honesty in his voice disarmed her. Maud studied his face, the face she'd come to know so well over these months. The slight crease between his brows when he was worried. The almost imperceptible softening around his eyes when he was pleased. The careful control that never quite masked the intensity beneath. You should have trusted me, she said finally. After everything, the night in the kitchen, the men in town, you should have known I'm stronger than you give me credit for. It wasn't about your strength. Min Suk closed the distance between them, stopping just short of touching her. It was about my fear. Not of your judgment, but of losing you. The words hung in the air between them, more revealing than any confession about his business. Before Maud could respond, a sharp buzz from the communication panel broke the moment. Min Suk moved swiftly to answer it. Go ahead, he said crisply. Ethan's voice filled the room. Sir, breach at the east gate. 2 guards down, non-lethal. Intruders moving toward the main house. Min Suk's entire demeanor changed, the vulnerable man of moments ago replaced by the cold strategist Maud had glimpsed in the hallway earlier. Containment protocol, he ordered. Keep them isolated from the event spaces. I'm on my way. Understood. The connection cut off. Min Suk turned back to Maud, already retrieving his jacket. You're leaving? She asked, though the answer was obvious. I have to. He shrugged into the jacket with efficient movements. The safe room is secure. Food, water, entertainment, everything you need is here. The door only opens from inside or with my biometric signature. So I'm just supposed to wait here while you go handle whatever's happening? Yes. His tone left no room for argument. These men are dangerous, Maud. Not like the ones you encountered in town. These are professionals. Killers. And what are you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Min Suk paused, his hand on the door panel. Someone who will do whatever necessary to protect what matters to me. The simple declaration sent a shiver down Maud's spine. Min Suk moved to a cabinet on the far wall, entering a code that revealed a hidden safe. From inside, he removed a slim folder and brought it to her. If something happens, he said, his voice deliberately calm, if I don't return within 24 hours, everything you need is in here. Passport. New identity. Access codes to accounts in your name. Maud stared at the folder, not taking it. You've been planning for this. I plan for every contingency. Min Suk placed the folder on the coffee table. It doesn't mean I expect to need it. Min Suk. Her voice caught. Don't go. For a brief moment, indecision flashed across his face. Then resolution hardened his features. I have to. He moved closer, cupping her face in his hands. My people are out there. My responsibility. Before she could argue further, he kissed her, hard and fast and desperate. A kiss that felt too much like goodbye. Then he was at the door, pressing his palm to the scanner. Min Suk, Maud called, making him pause. When you come back, we're going to have a very long conversation about trust. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. When I come back, he agreed. Then he was gone, the door sealing shut behind him. Maud stood frozen for several moments, emotions churning through her like a storm. Anger at being kept in the dark for so long. Fear for what was happening outside this secure room. And underneath it all, a startling realization that despite everything she'd just learned, her feelings for Min Suk hadn't diminished. If anything, finally knowing the truth had only strengthened something between them. She looked around the luxurious prison he'd left her in. Food, water, entertainment. A secure place to wait out the danger. The folder on the coffee table caught her eye, the escape plan he'd prepared for her. She picked it up, flipping through the contents. A Canadian passport with her photo but a different name. Bank account details with a balance that made her breath catch. Property deeds. Contact information for people who could help her disappear. Min Suk hadn't just been protecting her physically. He'd been preparing for her to have a life without him if necessary. Maud closed the folder, a decision crystallizing in her mind. She'd spent the past year running. From Chicago. From Andrew. From her own vulnerability. Always choosing safety over risk, distance over connection, fear over courage. Min Suk had finally trusted her with his truth. Now it was time to show him who she really was too. Maud moved to the door panel, studying it carefully. Min Suk had said it open from the inside. There had to be a release mechanism. She found it hidden in the elegant design, a recessed button that required firm pressure to activate. A warning flashed on the small screen, security alert, exterior conditions unsafe. Maud hesitated for only a moment. Then she pressed the confirmation button. The door slid open, revealing the empty security center beyond. The personnel who had been monitoring screens earlier were gone, presumably deployed to handle the breach. Maud stepped out of the safe room, the emerald silk of her dress whispering against her legs as she moved toward the exit. She might not know the estate's security systems like Min Suk did, but she knew the house itself intimately. Every corridor. Every staircase. Every hidden corner. And she wasn't about to sit safely underground while Min Suk faced danger above. Not anymore. The security center door closed behind Maud with a soft click that seemed way too loud in the empty room. Screens still flickered with camera feeds from around the estate, showing glimpses of the chaos unfolding, security personnel in tactical positions, guests being casually shepherded toward the central rooms, and, at the east perimeter, dark figures moving with military precision through the gardens. Okay, think, Maud whispered to herself. What would Min Suk do? Probably not leave a secure room during an attack, a voice in her head answered. She pushed that thought aside and focused on the security monitors. Most showed areas she recognized, but one caught her attention. A camera feed labeled E-Wing Access, showing a corridor she'd never been allowed to enter. Two men in dark clothing were attempting to bypass what looked like an electronic lock. The East Wing. The Forbidden Zone. Whatever Min Suk was protecting was clearly there. Maud scanned the room for anything useful. On a desk nearby, she spotted a security badge someone had left behind in their hurry to respond to the breach. She grabbed it, slipping it into the hidden pocket of her dress. The emerald silk, so perfect for a gala, now felt ridiculous for sneaking around during a security crisis. Kicking off her heels, Maud moved barefoot toward the exit that would lead her back to the main house. She needed to get to Min Suk, but first she needed information that might actually help him. The corridor outside the security center was deserted. Maud pressed her ear against the door leading to the main house, listening for any movement before easing it open. The service hallway beyond was empty, the usual bustle of staff replaced by eerie silence. She knew exactly where she was, the passage that connected the West Wing kitchens to the main house. During her months working here, Maud had mentally mapped every corridor, every staircase, every room. Now that knowledge might save her life. Moving silently on bare feet, she made her way toward the service stairs. If the intruders were focused on the east wing, her best chance was to circle around through the north section of the house, using the staff passageways that guests never saw. As she reached the stairs, voices echoed from above, unfamiliar, speaking Korean in harsh whispers. Maud pressed herself into an alcove, hardly daring to breathe as footsteps descended. Two men in dark clothing appeared, weapons visible beneath their jackets. Not a state security, their movements were different, more predatory. They paused on the landing, one speaking rapidly into a communication device. Maud caught a few words she recognized from her lessons with Min Suk: safe, office, and documents. They were looking for something specific. Something in Min Suk's office, which she knew was in the West Wing, exactly where she was headed. The men continued down the stairs, passing within feet of her hiding place. Once they disappeared around the corner, Maud slipped out and moved quickly upward. The main floor was eerily quiet, the gala sounds now contained to the central ballroom where guests were being entertained in blissful ignorance. Maud could hear the string quartet playing something upbeat, the music jarringly cheerful against the tension filling the rest of the house. She needed to get to Min Suk's office before the intruders did. Whatever they were searching for must be important. Using service corridors and her intimate knowledge of the house's blind spots, Maud made her way toward the West Wing. Twice she had to duck into closets or alcoves to avoid security personnel or intruders. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain anyone nearby could hear it. When she finally reached the hallway leading to Min Suk's office, she froze. The door was ajar, light spilling into the corridor. Someone was already inside. Maud pressed herself against the wall, inching closer until she could peer through the gap in the door. A man she didn't recognize was methodically searching the desk, rifling through drawers and checking beneath objects. Not one of the security team, his movements were too furtive, his expression too intense. Min Suk's words from earlier echoed in her mind, the codes have already been transmitted to Seoul. Even if they somehow got past security and into my office, they'd find nothing useful. But what if there was something else? Something Min Suk hadn't considered? The intruder moved to the wall safe, the same one Min Suk had opened in the study that night she dropped the vase. He was examining it with the focus of someone who knew exactly what he was looking for. Maud's mind raced. She'd cleaned this office dozens of times over the months. Knew every inch of it. Including the hidden drawer. A flash of memory, dusting the antique desk once when Min Suk was away, accidental pressure on a carved panel revealing a concealed compartment. She'd closed it immediately, respecting his privacy, but now that knowledge might be crucial. The intruder was getting frustrated with the safe, muttering under his breath. He pulled out a phone, texting rapidly, presumably calling for backup or someone with safe-cracking skills. This was her window. But what could she do? One unarmed woman in an evening gown against a professional with a weapon? Maud looked down at herself, at the emerald dress that had started this whole night, and suddenly had an idea so crazy it just might work. Taking a deep breath, she smoothed her hair, fixed a pleasant smile on her face, and walked confidently into the office. "Oh," she exclaimed, as if surprised. "I'm so sorry, I was looking for the ladies' room. One of the servers said it was down this hall." The man spun around, hand moving toward his waistband. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of her, a beautiful woman in an evening gown, looking completely out of place yet somehow believable as a lost guest. "This is a private office," he said, his English heavily accented. "Guest's area is back that way." He gestured vaguely, clearly wanting her gone but not wanting to draw attention. Oh, how embarrassing. Maud pressed a hand to her chest, taking a step into the room rather than retreating. "I'm so disoriented in this huge house. Are you security? Could you point me back toward the main ballroom?" Confusion crossed the man's face, clearly trying to decide if she was legitimate or a threat, while also wanting to continue his search. Maud used his hesitation to move further into the room, pretending to admire the decor while actually positioning herself closer to the desk. This is such a beautiful office. Mr. Kong has exquisite taste, doesn't he? I especially love this desk. She trailed her fingers along the edge, inching closer to the hidden panel. Antique Korean, isn't it? The carving is just stunning. The intruder's patience was visibly wearing thin. You need to leave. Now. Of course, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Maud smiled apologetically while her fingers found the exact spot on the carved panel. It's just, with all the excitement tonight. What excitement? The man's voice sharpened, his hand moving to his weapon again. Maud pressed the panel, feeling it give slightly under her touch. Oh, you know, the security demonstration Mr. Kong mentioned. Something about showing off the new system. Everyone's talking about it. The man's eyes narrowed. What security demonstration? She'd miscalculated. He wasn't buying it. In one fluid motion, the intruder drew his weapon, pointing it directly at her. Who are you? Security staff? Maud's heart nearly stopped, but she forced her face to remain calm. I told you, I'm just a guest who got lost. In a restricted area? Mentioning security protocols? He stepped closer, weapon steady. I don't think so. Hands where I can see them. Slowly, Maud raised her hands, mind racing for a new plan. The hidden drawer was open just a crack behind her, but she couldn't reach inside without him noticing. Look, she tried, there's been a misunderstanding. Shut up, the man snapped. Turn around. Hands on the desk. Maud complied, turning to face the desk, which positioned her directly in front of the hidden drawer. As she placed her hands on the polished wood, her right hand inched toward the opening. What's Kong hiding in here? The man demanded, moving closer. Where are the shipping documents? I don't know what you're talking about, Maud said, fingers brushing something inside the drawer. Smooth metal, small and cylindrical. The Incheon shipment, he pressed. We know it's coming through tomorrow night. Where's the manifest? The dock assignment? Incheon. The port city near Seoul. Maud filed the information away, her fingers closing around the object in the drawer. It felt like a USB drive. Maybe check the safe again, she suggested, trying to keep him distracted while sliding the drive up her sleeve. I've seen Mr. Kong open it before. You've seen the combination? Interest sharpened his voice. Not exactly, but... A noise in the hallway made them both freeze. Footsteps approaching rapidly. The intruder moved with alarming speed, grabbing Maud around the waist and pressing the gun against her side, hidden within the folds of her dress. Not a sound, he hissed in her ear as the footsteps reached the doorway. Min Suk appeared in the entrance, stopping abruptly at the sight before him. His face, already tense from whatever was happening elsewhere in the house, went completely blank when he saw Maud in the intruder's grip. For one terrifying moment, nobody moved. Then Min Suk's eyes flicked to Maud's, and something unspoken passed between them, trust, maybe. Or shared purpose. Lee Junho, Min Suk addressed the intruder calmly, as if they were meeting at a business dinner. I see you've met my guest. Your guest was just about to help me access certain information, the man, Lee, responded, his grip on Maud tightening. About tomorrow's shipment. Min Suk's expression remained neutral. There is no shipment tomorrow. Liar, Lee hissed. Our sources confirmed. Your sources, Min Suk interrupted smoothly, have been feeding you exactly what we wanted you to hear. Something in his confident tone made Lee hesitate. Maud felt the slight loosening of his grip as doubt crept in. It was all the opening she needed. In one swift movement, thanks to self-defense classes she'd taken after the Andrew disaster, Maud drove her elbow hard into Lee's solar plexus while twisting away from the gun. The man doubled over, momentarily winded. Min Suk moved with astonishing speed. Before Lee could recover, Min Suk had disarmed him and forced him to his knees, the man's own weapon now pressed against his temple. Maud, Min Suk said without looking at her, his voice deadly calm, Please step into the hallway. No, she replied, equally calm despite her racing heart. I need to tell you something first. Min Suk's eyes finally met hers, a storm of emotions visible despite his controlled expression, fury at finding her in danger, relief that she was unharmed, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. It can wait, he ground out. It can't. Maud held up the USB drive she'd retrieved from the drawer. And neither can this. Min Suk's eyes widened slightly in recognition. They're targeting Incheon tomorrow night, Maud continued. That's what they're looking for, shipping documents, manifests, doc assignments. Lee stiffened in Min Suk's grip, confirming her words. How do you know this? Min Suk demanded. He told me while looking for information. Maud nodded toward Lee. He specifically mentioned Incheon and tomorrow night. Something shifted in Min Suk's expression, calculation, realization, decision. Ethan, he called, not raising his voice but somehow knowing his security chief was nearby. Sure enough, Ethan appeared in the doorway, weapon drawn. He took in the scene with professional detachment. Take Mr. Lee to the holding room, Min Suk instructed. Then contact Sungmin in Seoul. Tell him there's been a change of plans. Move everything up by 24 hours. The Choi family is planning an interception at Incheon tomorrow night. Sir, Ethan acknowledged, moving forward to take custody of the prisoner. As Ethan led Lee away, Min Suk turned fully to Maud, the careful control he'd maintained finally slipping to reveal the fury underneath. What the hell were you thinking? He demanded, closing the distance between them. I left you in the safe room for a reason. I was thinking I could help, Maud replied, refusing to back down. And I was right. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. She held up the USB drive again. And I found this. Whatever's on it, he was looking for it. And I heard valuable information about their plans. Min Suk stared at her for a long moment, anger warring with other emotions on his face. Finally, he took the drive from her hand, examining it briefly before pocketing it. This contains backup encryption keys, he said, his voice tight. If they had accessed it, they could have intercepted communications between here and Seoul for months. So I did help, Maud pressed. That's not, Min Suk cut himself off, running a hand through his hair in rare display of frustration. Yes. You helped. You also directly disobeyed me and put yourself in incredible danger. I made a choice, Maud corrected. My choice. Not yours. Their eyes locked in silent battle, neither willing to back down. The information about Incheon, Min Suk said finally. That could prevent a major security breach. Save lives. Protect a shipment worth millions. You're welcome, Maud replied, a hint of smugness creeping into her voice despite the gravity of the situation. To her surprise, Min Suk's expression softened suddenly, the anger giving way to something that looked almost like wonder. You are. He began, then shook his head slightly. I've never met anyone like you. Is that good or bad? Both. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Definitely both. Before Maud could respond, Ethan reappeared in the doorway. Sir, Seoul confirms. They're moving everything up to tonight. Our teams have secured the perimeter, and we've apprehended 3 more of Choi's men. The guests remain unaware of the situation. Min Suk nodded, slipping back into his role as commander. And the primary package? Secure. Ready for transport whenever you give the order. Proceed as planned. Min Suk's voice was all business again. I want the estate cleared within the hour. Yes, sir. Ethan disappeared as quickly as he'd arrived. Min Suk turned back to Maud, studying her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. We need to talk, he said. About tonight. About what happens next. About everything. I know. Maud smoothed down her emerald dress, suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look after everything that had happened. But first, there's something I need to say. Min Suk waited, his eyes never leaving hers. I'm not afraid of who you are, she said simply. Or what you do. I'm not running anymore. The words hung between them, a declaration more revealing than any confession about his business could have been. Min Suk's expression softened completely, vulnerability replacing the controlled mask he showed the world. Good, he said quietly. Because I'm not letting you go. Dawn crept through the windows of the Kang estate, pale light illuminating the aftermath of the previous night. The grand ballroom, so alive with music and laughter just hours ago, stood empty, crystal glasses still scattered on tables, flower arrangements wilting slightly, abandoned napkins testimony to the guests' hasty departure. Maud stood at the tall windows of Min Suk's private study, watching security teams making final sweeps of the grounds. She'd changed out of the emerald dress into clothes Ethan had brought from her quarters, simple black pants and a sweater that felt like armor after the vulnerability of silk. The door opened behind her. She didn't need to turn to know it was Min Suk. The last of Choi's men have been removed from the property, he said, his voice betraying exhaustion despite its usual control. Seoul reports the shipment arrived safely. Thanks to your information, we were able to reroute everything before they could position their people. Maud nodded, still watching the grounds. And the guests? Believe they witnessed an elaborate security demonstration followed by an unfortunate water main break that required evacuation. A hint of dry humor colored his tone. Several have already called to compliment our commitment to realism. Finally, she turned to face him. Min Suk had shed his tuxedo jacket and tie, his white shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He looked both powerful and strangely vulnerable in the morning light. So it's over, she said. This round. Min Suk moved further into the room, pouring 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter. The Choi family won't retaliate immediately. They lost face last night. They'll need to regroup. He offered 1 glass to Maud, who took it with a nod of thanks. But they will retaliate eventually, she said. Not a question. Yes. Min Suk didn't sugarcoat it. This is how the game is played. A dangerous game. Very. His eyes held hers steadily. Which is why we need to talk about what happens next. Maud took a sip of water, grateful for the coolness against her dry throat. I'm listening. Min Suk set his glass down and moved to his desk, opening a drawer to retrieve a familiar folder, the same one he'd shown her in the safe room. Everything in here is still valid, he said, placing it on the desk between them. New identity. Sufficient funds. Properties in 3 countries. Contacts who can help you disappear completely. Maud stared at the folder, understanding slowly dawning. You're sending me away. I'm giving you a choice. Min Suk's voice was carefully measured. Last night proved that my world is exactly as dangerous as I always feared. You were nearly killed because of your connection to me. I was nearly killed because I chose to leave the safe room, Maud corrected. A room you wouldn't have needed to be in if not for me. Min Suk's composure slipped slightly, frustration bleeding through. This is my reality, Maud. Enemies. Threats. Violence. It doesn't end. And you think the answer is to ship me off with a new name and a bank account? She couldn't keep the edge from her voice. Make me disappear like a problem you've solved. Not a problem. Min Suk's expression softened. Someone precious I want to protect. The sincerity in his voice disarmed her momentarily, but Maud rallied quickly. I've spent the past year running, Min Suk. From Andrew. From Chicago. From myself. She crossed the room until she stood directly before him. I'm done running. This isn't running. It's survival. It's hiding. And I won't do it anymore. Maud pushed the folder away with one finger. So here's my counteroffer. Min Suk's eyebrows rose slightly, that ghost of a smile touching his lips despite the tension. Counteroffer? Yes. Maud straightened, channeling every ounce of the executive she'd once been. I stay. Not as your maid. Not as your protected mistress. But as your partner. Min Suk went very still. My partner, he repeated carefully. Someone who stands beside you, not behind you. Someone who knows everything, the business, the dangers, the plans. Someone who has a voice in decisions. Her eyes held his, unwavering. Someone who chooses the risks with open eyes. You don't understand what you're asking. Min Suk's voice roughened. My world doesn't work that way. Then make it work that way. Maud stepped closer. Or are you not as powerful as everyone thinks? His jaw tightened at the challenge. It's not about power. It's about keeping you safe. No one is ever completely safe. Maud's hand found his, her fingers lacing through his. Life doesn't work that way. Min Suk looked down at their joined hands, conflict evident in every line of his body. I need to think, he said finally. And so do you. This isn't a decision to make in the aftermath of adrenaline and danger. Maud nodded slowly. Fair enough. How long do you need? Meet me back here at sunset. Min Suk squeezed her hand once before releasing it. We'll both have clearer heads then. I know you're holding your breath for how this ends. Before we wrap this up, if this story has kept you hooked, please take a second to hit subscribe. This channel survives on your support, and I'd love to bring you more stories like this one. Smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, then let's see how our story concludes. The study was bathed in golden light when Maud